Hi there, my name is Scipion, and I'm a pilot in the video game Wildgate. Today I want to make a video to teach you about the concepts of breaking line of sight, as well as kiting enemy ships around asteroids, in order to maintain cover and help your ship regen its health. Piloting can be quite daunting for newer players, but it doesn't have to be. A key factor in this game is that the ship movement speeds can be quite slow, as well as the turning speeds. And combined with the fact that the environments can be quite sparse and empty, this means that your positioning is quite key. As you can see here, I'm flying a Hunter, which is one of the default ships, but blends a good balance of ship speed with the shield sound, as well as firepower. I'm going to use this Legion ship here as our dummy target for an enemy ship. As you can see, I've already parked relatively close to a nice asteroid, which will give us good cover once we go behind it, and which is a good one to use on his example of kiting around. One of the things that I will recommend pilots to get very used to is just using the probe sensor. Whenever you're about to engage in a fight, I recommend getting a good look at your surroundings. You've already seen what it looks like here, so I don't really need to do it again. But whenever you're approaching a new engagement, I think it's paramount to have a good idea of what you're working with. As we can see, there is this asteroid here, as well as this larger one here. If I was to look behind, I can see another one over there, and then some further ones back there. When you get into larger fights, you'll probably have to think of how to go from cover to cover. You could start with this one, and then this one, and then that one over there, and so on and so forth. You don't have to limit yourself to asteroids though. As you can see, we have a nice POI Stardock over there. This one would also make a good cover. In fact, if you go through it, that gives you nice cover, as people already tend to use it for. The Wildgate itself is also an excellent one to kite around, since it's quite spherical. Alright, let's start moving. Now that we're on helm, I want to bring your attention to two things. First of all, you need to be able to look around. In Wildgate, you only really have a first-person view. This means that your view is quite limited, because when you look, well, your ship blocks a lot of your view. Now, you might already have this setting enabled or not, but just as a refresher. You press the escape key and go to the options. Go to gameplay, general, and then go down to helm free look. This option is off by default, I believe. But if you turn it on, what it allows you to do is just move your camera with the mouse without having to press right click first. Maybe you didn't even know that you could move your your view around. This is very important, because you have to be able to get a good idea of what's around you. And in fact, if you have quite a wide field of view like I do, if you look up, you can even see all the way in the top left that I can see almost behind me. This is quite useful when needing to look around. The other one is, if you press the 1 key, this gives you your rear view. You can also move your camera view over here. And since we're on a Hunter happens to have excellent downward view, upward view, and left and right view in your reverse camera, better than in the front one. This becomes extremely important when trying to maneuver around tight objects. Alright, let's get back to it. Let's say we were in a fight. As we can see here, because I have probed this Legion ship, I can see a circle around where its position is. I can see the name, I can see its HP, and I can see the distance that it is from us. So, we already know that we have our cover with this asteroid here. So let's start moving towards it. Another thing I'll comment on real quick is keep in mind the shape of the cover that you're going to be using. This asteroid tends to be quite wide in a sense. It's quite oval shaped. However, if we look at it from the side, we'll see that its shape is a lot more spherical. This means that this is probably easier to move around up and down, rather than trying to maneuver around it horizontally. This will depend the way that you use the cover will depend on many factors. As I'll get to quite soon, verticality is quite important in Wildgate, because your vertical ship speed is a lot slower than your horizontal one. So you do have to keep in mind both. In some cases, it might be better to go around horizontally. In other cases, it might be better to go around vertically. Quite often, using a combination of both might give you the best result. But the main reason I want to bring it up is when we start facing asteroids like, let's say, this larger one here. It should be fairly obvious that if you go around the corner, let's say on this side, and then you try to fly around horizontally on that long side, you are going to get shot for a very long time and are going to have a bad time. However, if you were to try and go vertically around this side here, this is probably going to be much easier to maneuver around. So these are things to keep in mind when picking your cover and so on. Let's get back to the ship. So in this case, if I look back, we'll quite obviously need to move forward. One of the things that you'll need to gradually develop as a pilot is a sense of how large your ship is. So I've kind of gone past it already a little bit here, but I can tell that here I'm already about like 70 meters under it. This means that it should have quite a lot of clearance. At this point, I already know that I'm kind of past the asteroid. I already know that I had vertical clearance, so I'm free to move up. In fact, if I look behind, I can quite clearly see that I'm past the asteroid. As a general rule, you can kind of use the lighting. As you can see, there's a base that is brighter, which means that it's the base over there. Alright, let's just move up for now. This is going to be quite obvious, but as I move up, you'll notice that the ship goes behind the asteroid. Now, I've unfortunately lost the probe, but I know that it's behind, and so that it's over there. Let's go give it another scan. This is part of why probing is very important, and you should communicate with your team in order to get new scans. As we can see here, we are now behind cover. If the ship was to be getting closer, and we would know by the distance getting shorter and shorter here, we will probably know that we need to continue moving and maneuvering around the asteroid. The closest path for this one is probably going to be to follow our path, which means that it's probably going to keep going under. Obviously this means that, well, the fastest way to go around this asteroid will probably be to continue going up and then move forward the other way in order to make a loop around it. So obviously I'm going to turn around here, continue moving up, and so on. Now, quite often you'll run up against problems of visibility. So in this case, as I move forward, I'm going to lose sight of the asteroid. This is a bit tricky. Remember, you can use your vector view to help you for this. But in general, this is just going to come down to your spatial memory and awareness. And you're just going to have to fly and play a lot to get used to that. So in this case, now that I've continued moving forward, well, I've clearly gone past it now because I can see under the asteroid. But I could use this line here to guide me and tell me that I've gone past it, which means that I can start turning again, and then moving down. And we can essentially repeat this ad nauseum in order to kite it vertically. Now, you've probably already noticed, I'm moving quite slow with the vertical speed. It only caps at 66 here. However, there are some tricks that we can use for this. You're probably already aware that by farming fuel, you can allow yourself to use the boost function. As you can see now, the speed is 170. If I boost, my speed goes up to 340. This is about double the speed. However, a fact that some newer players might not be aware of is that boost also functions for vertical speed. Now, an important thing is that when you use boost, it is going to trigger your ship to move forward at maximum speed. However, what you can do is you can counteract that by pressing the backwards key. And this will allow you to essentially boost only vertically. Let's give it a try. I'm going to use boost by pressing the E key by default. I'm going to press the space bar by default to make myself move up. And I'm also going to cancel the forward momentum by pressing this. So watch closely. There's a few things happening quite fast here. Boost up and S. and my upward speed is now 131. And I've cleared about halfway of the vertical here. That boost alone will have allowed me to... It's a very quick way to basically make yourself get LOS quickly, vertically. I will also note that this is also another reason why farming fuel is very important, and just fuel management in general in Wildgate. The more fuel you have, the more boosts you can do. But even more importantly in my eyes, the more vertical boosts you can do. Of course, at the higher end levels, most people know about this, but at the lower ends, this might be a big advantage. So we can go around like this, and let's do it one more time. As I'm getting close to there, I can start already moving there. And then doing this. And starting moving forward again. As you play more and more, you'll get a better sense of the size and shape of your ship. And you'll know how close you can get to asteroids and all. Let's do another little move. Let's try to move around horizontally. One thing I like to do is to look at the complete edge of my camera, left and right, and then I try to keep an eye out for a little bit of a sliver of an asteroid there. This should give me a good idea of roughly, or well, this should allow you to keep an eye on whether you're close enough or not. Ideally, you do want to stay as close as you can to the asteroid, because it'll allow you to do faster maneuvers around it. Unfortunately, there's always the risk of ramming and touching the asteroid, but sometimes that just comes with it and you have to deal with it. Now, one last thing I would like to mention is that forward and vertical speed in this game can be additive to an extent. This means that combining both is ultimately probably what you're going to want to try and do. So let's do some of that. As you can see, I'm maneuvering diagonally around this asteroid, and still keeping a lot of momentum. There are cases where you'll probably want to stick with vertical motion, in some cases where you'll want to stick with horizontal motion. You'll also probably want to start dancing around the asteroid a little bit. If I had a smuggler's turn on, for example, I could choose at some point to just smuggler's turn and then start moving in a different direction in order to juke the enemy. And so that's about the gist of heading around an asteroid. Before my timer runs out, I'll talk about another point, which is just maintaining LOS by going from asteroid to asteroid. Let's do one last scan around the Legion ship. There we go. So let's say this ship was closing the distance. Let's say this was a ship that we don't really want to fight up close. This is where the concept of kiting will come into play. So as we kind of mentioned before, we know about this asteroid, we know we have this one here, and we know we have some other ones there. What you want to do is essentially jump from asteroid to asteroid. So I know that there's one under me at this point. What I want to do is maintain the ship behind that asteroid, and then get behind another cover. And now we are behind another asteroid. From this point on, I want to move over in a straight line and essentially keep the ship circle behind that rock until I get to my next cover, which in this case is going to be this one. So I keep kiting, and then because the bottom view isn't the best, I have to trust my gut and game sense. At some point around here, there we go, I can start seeing the asteroid. Conveniently here, I'm going to do another boost to bring me downwards to get LOS again. And there we go, we've successfully managed to kite the ship and maintain LOS to stay alive. I hope this video helps you, and I'll try to continue doing further ones to help you out with other tips and tricks. See you around.